today's video, I'm going to show you 3 more types of hem. 2 of them are hand sewn and 1 of them is machine that's perfect for stretchy fabric. Hi friends, welcome back to So Obvious. I'm a Polinar. If you watched my last video, you already learned how to do 3 different types of hemming techniques. Today we're going to learn 3 more. So let's get started. Let's start with the hand sewn stitches. The first stitch we're going to learn is the blind stitch. The blind stitch is great because it leaves a clean, nice looking, invisible stitch on the outside of your fabric. This kind of stitch is commonly used in dress pants. Okay, so for the hand sewn stitches, you are going to need a hand sewing needle, your mini shears, and some thread. We're going to start by cutting about 30 inches of thread. And then you're going to thread your needle. There we go. Once you thread your needle, you're going to pull the thread so that you have both. You have it folded in half, and you're going to tie a knot on this side using both of them. What I do is I usually wrap it around my finger once, and then I kind of just twist them like that, pull it through, and it makes a knot. So for the blind stitch hem, what you usually do is fold your fabric up twice. The size of the hem is really up to you and depends on whatever project you're working on. But usually this hem is seen on pants, so I'm going to do what I usually would do for a pair of pants. So I would usually take about 1.5 inches, press it up, and then I would press it up again. So what we're going to do is we're going to start on this end. I'm going to run the needle through this little loop right here of fabric so that we hide the knot. Pull it through. And what you're going to do is basically kind of hold these open. What you're going to do is take 1 or 2 threads from the self fabric, very small amount. You don't want your seam to be seen. Pull it through. And then you're going to go over to this side that's facing it. And that one, I'm not as careful with this side because you're not going to see it anyway. But it does look a lot nicer if you can't see any of the seam. So then you're going to jump back over to this side. And you're going to keep doing that, trying to keep your stitches as uniform as possible. And obviously you would be doing this with a matching thread. Then if you see on the edge over here, this is the right side of the fabric, you can only see little bits of the thread. And if it was matching thread, you wouldn't be able to see it at all. So you're gonna keep doing that until you finish the seam, and then you should be done. Now let's move on to the herringbone stitch. The herringbone stitch is great for garments where the lining may not be completely attached, but will be tacked to it. Like the blind stitch, it's basically invisible on the right side of the fabric, but on the wrong side of the fabric, it's gonna make an X pattern. Personally, I wouldn't use this stitch for any garment that is not going to be lined because the thread can easily get snagged. Okay, for the herringbone stitch, you're going to need the same supplies as the blind stitch. You're also going to press the hem allowance up the same way that you would with the blind stitch. Even though I have quite a bit of experience as a sewer, I still have a hard time keeping my stitches very uniform. So something that I do when I can is put little marks on the fabric so that I know how big to make certain stitches. For the herringbone stitch, I usually wouldn't make the stitches this big, but I want you guys to be able to see it. But these stitches, just for your information, are going to be about twice as big as they usually should be. Again, going to thread our needle with a single thread this time. Now that the needle is threaded, we are going to make a knot on the end, and we're going to get started. One thing that's very important to know is that for the herringbone stitch, if you are left-handed like I am, you are going to be starting on the right side of the seam. If you are right-handed, you're going to be starting on the left side of the seam. That is because we are essentially sewing backwards. That probably doesn't make sense to you right now, but once you see the stitches, it might make a little bit more sense. So I'm going to put the knot in between these folded hem allowances. Okay, so now is when we're going to start. With the needle facing towards the right when you're left-handed, and for everyone who's right-handed, you're going to be facing towards the left. You are going to take a couple of threads from up here and pull it through. Then you're going to come down here do the same thing. Don't pull too hard. Then you're going to come back up here, do just a few threads, and then you're going to come back down here. And because this is folded in hem allowance, you can go a little bit deeper than just the 2 threads, but make sure not to go through to the right side of the fabric. You can see when I lay it flat and pull a little bit tighter, it is making these kind of X's design. And then when you turn it over, you can barely see anything. You can see it right here because it's black, but if this wasn't a matching thread, you wouldn't see it at all. And that is the herringbone stitch. Now let's move on to the machine stitch that is perfect for both woven and stretch fabric. For this stitch, you are going to need 2 spools of thread and a twin needle. Most machines come with twin needles. If not, you can purchase them at your local sewing store. If you don't want to or can't purchase a twin needle, you can have a similar outcome with stretch fabric by using a zigzag stitch instead of a straight stitch. Personally, I prefer to use the twin needle because it looks a lot cleaner on the right side of the fabric, where the zigzag stitch, if done wrong, can make your garment a little homemade looking, which is what we're trying to avoid. Here are a couple of the twin needles that I have. As you can see, this blue one is a little bit wider than this red one. That's because this blue one is made for stretch fabric and this one is a universal, so it can be used for stretch and woven. We are going to have 2 spools of thread feeding through the bottom, and each one's going to be going in 1 needle. But we're still only going to have 1 bobbin case in the bottom, which means that as we're sewing, the thread in the bobbin is going to be moving back and forth between one needle to the other. That causes it to create a zigzag stitch on the wrong side of the fabric. That zigzag stitch is what allows us to have the stretchiness in our fabric. So I'm going to remove this foot. We are going to install our needle first, and I will show you how to thread your machine for a twin needle. I already took off the regular needle that I had on there. Most machines have this little screw here. Some of them are hand screws, some of them you're going to have a screwdriver. Then once you remove it, if you've never installed a needle before on your machine, if you look at this little stick that you put into the machine, you'll notice that one side is round and the other side is flat. The flat side always faces the back of your machine. So I'm going to make sure the flat side's on the back. I'm going to slide this in here, hold it tightly, and screw this back up. Now I can snap the foot back in. Now some machines require you to use a special foot for a twin needle. Some of them don't. Mine doesn't, but that's just because all I gotta do is change the stitch so the needle can go towards the middle so that it's not hitting the edge of the foot. Okay, so here I have my regular spool of thread, and I am going to thread the machine regularly as I usually would. Then, once I get to the needle part, I am going to thread the needle on the left side. Okay, so the first needle is threaded, the needle on the left. Now I'm going to thread the needle on the right. For that, we're going to need our second spool. Now, some machines have attachments that go somewhere up here so you can put a second spool of thread. Mine doesn't because I put it just on the bobbin winder. And now for this one, I'm going to thread everything exactly the same up until I get to this part where we're going to be putting it through the needle. Okay, so I have threaded the entire machine. Now, when we get to this part here, what you would usually do is put it behind this little holder right here. But because we're trying to make sure that the two threads don't entangle themselves with each other, we are going to skip this part and just go straight through to threading the needle. We're going to try anyway. Okay, so now I have both needles threaded. Both the threads are put through the foot towards the back. Now what we gotta make sure is that the needles aren't going to hit the foot. So what I always do is hold the thread, hold it back, and just do a couple stitches with your hand. Just make sure nothing gets tangled, and it looks like everything should be okay. For the fabric that I'm using, I just pressed it about 3/4 of an inch in. As you can see, this has a little bit of stretch to it. I'm going to line up my fabric with the edge of my sewing foot. We're going to stitch, back stitch, and then we're gonna sew straight. Once you get to the end, back stitch again. And here we have the double needle hem. As you can see, it still retains a little bit of its stretchiness. It's nice and flat, looks very professional. On the back, you can see how the bobbin did a little bit of a zigzag stitch, which allows us to maintain that stretchiness. Now, obviously, for this fabric here, you would do some sort of finishing. You wouldn't leave it like this because it would fray, but I guess I had a brain fart and forgot about it. If you liked today's video, make sure that you like, comment, subscribe, share, and ring the bell. You can also follow me on Instagram at @APollyLook. If you have any questions, if you want to be updated on future videos, or if you just want to chat. Okay, friends, that's all I have for you today. You don't have to go home, but you can stay here. If you didn't like the video, you definitely can stay here. Okay, bye.